Common sense tells us that our existence is but a brief candle of light between two eternities. For man alone has foreknowledge of his coming death, and with it the chance to ponder the strangeness of his destiny.
Life, death, and eternity. Throughout recorded history, the desire to comprehend the true nature of this mysterious trinity has burned within the human heart. What, if anything, exists for us beyond the grave? Is man nothing more than a collection of tissue and bone, with a fate no greater than the dust of the earth? Or is some part of him destined to live on after death in a realm or dimension set apart from this world? The search for answers has shaped the spiritual foundations of every civilization that has ever existed on this planet.
People have a sense in their everyday lives, a sense of immortality, a sense of there being something else. And so every civilization has really needed a sense of the afterlife in order to know how to live their present lives too.
It's true. Soon and very soon, there will come a time when you too will be looking at a tombstone, and you will have to face what it is on the other side.
Fear and mystery combine in wondering what is beyond the grave, I think, drives us to this curiosity about, is there an afterlife? Is there an above life? Is there an underlife? Is there some other dimension of life I'm not experiencing now? And if so, what's it look like, and what does it mean for me?
The archives of human history are filled with attempts to grasp the meaning of life after death. Yet, with the passing of centuries, most of these explanations have come and gone, satisfying curiosity for a little while, before fading to the winds of legend and myth. But there is a vision of eternity that has endured the test of time to dramatically touch the world. A sacred truth, grounded in the ancient Torah, that for more than 3,000 years has cast a brilliant light on things eternal. And the hope and ideals it has inspired are crucial threads in the spiritual, moral, and intellectual fabric of Western civilization. This vision of eternity is revealed in the pages of the most popular book ever written, the Holy Scriptures we now call the Old and New Testaments of the Bible.
The Bible is the most important, most significant book ever written. The Bible serves to remind people of God's ongoing work in history, and so people have a sense of a personal intervening God that will not relinquish people merely because of death.
I think every book of the Bible is spiced with hints of heaven. There are clues and there are pieces of this jigsaw puzzle. I'm convinced on every page.
Transcending culture and time, the Bible has forged an indelible mark upon the world's perceptions of heaven, hell, and the eternal destiny of man, while inspiring artists, poets, scholars, and theologians in their quest to unlock perhaps the greatest mysteries ever confronted by the human race. Mysteries that still captivate the heart and mind as we take our first steps into a new millennium. Join us now as we embark upon a spiritual odyssey of extraordinary dimensions for a view of what lies on the other side of death as seen through what may well be history's most remarkable window on eternity.
Over the years, we have explored America's attitudes toward the afterlife and other religion dimensions, and we find in surveys that a substantial majority, actually 6 in 10 Americans, believe that Jesus Christ will return to earth one day. They believe in the second coming, and a high proportion of that group believes that it's imminent, actually. In fact, 4 in 10 say it's very or fairly likely that Jesus Christ will return in the next century.
For nearly 2,000 years, the second coming of Jesus Christ, perhaps history's most anticipated moment, has played a vital role in understanding the biblical visions of heaven and hell. Late in the 1st century, the Scripture's most vivid account of Christ's return to earth was revealed on a desolate island in the Mediterranean. John, one of Christ's original 12 disciples, had been exiled by the Roman Caesar Domitian to Patmos, a 6 by 10 mile fragment of rock 40 miles off the coast of what is now Turkey. There, in his 90th year, the aged apostle received a vision from God that would forever change the world's outlook on eternity.
On the Lord's day, I heard behind me a loud voice like a trumpet, which said, "Write on a scroll what you see." Then I turned to see the voice that was speaking to me, and I saw someone like the Son of Man, dressed in a robe reaching down to his feet. His eyes were like blazing fire. When I saw him, I fell at his feet as though dead. Then he placed his right hand upon me and said, "Do not be afraid. I am the first and the last, the living one. I was dead, and behold, I am alive forever and ever. I hold the keys of death and Hades. Write therefore what you have seen, what is now and what will take place later."
I think John's first objective was to try somehow to get into words the things he was seeing. John had a second primary objective, I think, as he probably weighed over the content of what he was hearing and seeing, and that message is history is going somewhere. History has a consummation. It's not just every day and every way things kind of muddle along like they have for millennia past and millennia future. There's a direction to this, and not just a direction, but a consummation of all of human history.
The description of all John saw is now recorded in the 22 chapters of the Bible's last book, the Revelation. To those who interpret the Scriptures literally, John's words unveil a mysterious, compelling account of the final conflict between the ultimate forces of good and evil.
And they gathered the kings together to the place that in Hebrew is called Armageddon. And the number of mounted troops was 200 million, for I heard their number. Proclaim this among the nations. Prepare for war. Let the fighting men draw near and attack. Multitudes, multitudes in the valley of decision. For the day of the Lord is near in the valley of decision.
Many believe that John beheld the armies of the world assembling on the Megiddo plains north of Jerusalem. They had gathered from throughout the earth, descending upon Israel for what would be the bloodiest and most devastating war in human history. This was not merely a battle of mortal armies, but of the supernatural powers of Satan against the power of God.
God doesn't enter any battles he doesn't win, because he possesses all power. All the resources to fight any battle are at his disposal. And so that great battle does include conventional weaponry of that era, but I believe from the description of the Apostle John in the book of the Revelation, it has metaphysical and supernatural dimensions as well. There is an outpouring of spiritual forces from both the righteous and the demonic side, so that it has a supernatural dimension to it as well as a natural dimension with the physical combat between and among warriors.
Then there came flashes of lightning, rumblings, peals of thunder, and a severe earthquake, like none that has ever occurred since man has been on the earth. From the sky, huge hailstones, about 100 pounds each, fell upon men, and they cursed God because of the plague of hail. And the angel swung his sickle on the earth, and blood flowed as high as a horse's bridle for 200 miles. And I saw heaven standing open, and there before me was a white horse, whose rider is called Faithful and True. With justice he judges and makes war. On his robe he has his name written, King of Kings and Lord of Lords.
The forces of Satan are completely destroyed when Jesus Christ returns to earth as a conquering king. Bible scholars contend that in accordance with Old Testament prophecy, Christ will enter Jerusalem here through the now sealed Golden Gate to establish his kingdom and inaugurate a reign of perfect peace that will last for a millennium.
He shall judge between the nations, and they shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. In his days Judah will be saved, and Israel will dwell safely.
For 1,000 years, Christ will rule the world from Jerusalem, fulfilling God's promise to make Israel a great nation. Peace and righteousness will envelop the planet as Satan is bound and rendered powerless. Yet as John goes on to describe in Revelation, this millennium of prosperity is only a foretaste of heaven. for Satan will rebel against God a final time.
When the 1,000 years are over, Satan will be released from his prison and will go out to deceive the nations, to gather them for battle. They marched across the breadth of the earth and surrounded the camp of God's people, the city he loves. But fire came down from heaven and devoured them, and the devil who had deceived them was thrown into the lake of burning sulfur, to be tormented day and night forever. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away. I also saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, "Now the dwelling of God is with men, and he will live with them. He will make his home with them, and they will be his people, and he will be their God." He who was seated on the throne said, "I am making everything new." Then he said, "Write this down, for these words are trustworthy and true."
On the rocky shores of an island called Patmos, a man named John stepped across the threshold of forever. In a vision from God, Christ's beloved disciple had witnessed the end of human history and the beginning of two eternities. One that would bask in the light of heaven, the other hopelessly shrouded in the darkness of hell.
There is a very strong belief that there's a very evil force in this world, and we should note that about half of the populace, somewhat more than half, about 53% or so, believe in hell. And about that same proportion believe in the devil, Satan, a force of evil. About half of those people believe in a personal devil, and the other half believe in an evil force or satanic force.
Who of us can dwell with the consuming fire? Who of us can dwell with everlasting burning? If your hand causes you to sin, cut it off. It is better for you to enter life maimed than with two hands to go into hell, where the fire never goes out.
Throughout history, the biblical concepts of a relentless battle between good and evil, a final judgment, and banishment to a realm of unrelenting torment have simultaneously terrified and captivated the human imagination. As artists and authors, from Dante to Rembrandt, Milton to Raphael, searched for words and images to help them convey hell's unimaginable horror, their quest to understand inevitably led them to the pages of the Bible.
But the cowardly, the unbelieving, the vile, the immoral, their place will be in the fiery lake of burning sulfur. This is the second death.
In 1535, the greatest artist the world has ever known turned to the scriptures in his attempt to convey the terror of final judgment and hell. His name was Michelangelo Buonarroti. More than 20 years had passed since Michelangelo had completed his masterpiece on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. Now, Pope Paul III challenged him to finish another staggering commission, a 40 by 60-foot mural that would cover the Sistine's altar wall and depict the final judgment of man. For 6 years, Michelangelo labored, driven by a desire to communicate the spiritual and emotional drama of Christ's words from the 25th chapter of Matthew's Gospel.
When the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the angels with him, he will sit on his throne in heavenly glory. All the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate the people one from another, as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. Then the king will say to those on his right, "Come, you who are blessed by my Father, take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. Then he will say to those on his left, "Depart from me, you who are cursed, into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels."
At the heart of Michelangelo's masterpiece is the biblical doctrine of man's ultimate responsibility for his own eternal destiny. The artist believed the most severe punishment any human being would ever endure is the realization that his own actions and decisions had condemned him to an eternity in hell. When Pope Paul viewed the completed mural, he was so moved by its power that he fell to his knees and prayed, "Lord, charge me not with my sins when thou shalt come on the day of judgment." As the prophecies, histories, and letters that would become the Old and New Testaments of the Bible were being written in ancient Israel, 3 words were most often used in relation to the concept of hell. The first 2, the Greek Hades and the Hebrew Sheol, describe a holding area for the souls of the dead. It was believed to be a barren, stark domain where the inhabitants lived in isolation, separated from God while awaiting his final judgment. The third word, Gehenna, is more terrifying in its implications. Taken from the name of this now tranquil valley located outside the southern walls of Jerusalem, Gehenna is used throughout the New Testament to convey hell's eternal fire and pain.
And Gehenna often refers to this burning place. Gehenna was the place outside Jerusalem, which was the city dump and trash heap where they burned all the foul stuff and all the filth of the city, and it burned, and it burned day and night and was a stench and a miserable place nobody wanted to go. So it was a wonderful Greek description of what a hell-like situation would be.
Though the ancient fires of Gehenna no longer burn beyond Jerusalem's walls, symbolically, they still rage today in another city, half a planet away. For sometimes the pain and suffering of hell are best understood in the darkest shadows of human existence.
There is a hell. What that's going to be like, the where, whatever, you know, it's going to be a place without faith. It's going to be a place without hope. It's going to be a place without love.
For the past 5 years, Father Francis Pompey has committed his life to the needs of the men, women, and children who struggle for survival in one of America's worst inner-city neighborhoods, the Kensington section of Philadelphia. It is a labor of both love and pain, an experience that has shaped the Franciscan friars' understanding of the agony of hell.
Life here in the Kensington section of Philadelphia, you know, one of the worst neighborhoods in the United States. You see the kind of hell that people have to live in. And the people living in abandoned buildings and crawling out of basements of just garbage-filled buildings. Their lives ruined by drugs or just poverty or homelessness. And most of all, that primal loneliness. That loneliness and emptiness, which I believe is the ultimate experience of hell. We were created to be nurtured and to be loved. And when that doesn't happen, it creates hell for people. It adds to that depression, that separation, that loneliness. If you live here for any extended period of time, you get the feeling that you're surrounded by it. There's no trees in my neighborhood. We're in a concrete jungle. We got a train going down the center of our street, elevated train. The sounds we hear are screeching sounds. We hear yells. You hear crying. You smell stench. You smell garbage. The gutters are filled with syringes and vials and little packets of heroin and crack, cocaine. It affects our people who are homeless out there on the street. You see a deadness in them. You see an emptiness in their eyes. They've just been scarred so much and used so much that there's just this deadness to them.
Yet despite the desperation of Kensington, life here is but a dim reflection of the torment to be experienced in an eternity separated from God.
Hell will be infinitely worse because even here in Kensington, in the midst of all this, there is still the possibility and the potential of faith, hope, and love. Why? Because they can come to the soup kitchen and get a meal. They can go to the shelter and find a place to stay. They can come and get in a conversation with other people who care about them. Okay, and they care about each other, and they care about us. Those elements, that possibility, that potential won't be in hell, where it's still here in Kensington. In the book of Revelation, where it says that every tear will be wiped away, sadness, suffering, pain, death, and separation. If we take those elements and project them onto the experience of hell, they won't be wiped away. That'll be the experience of hell. All those things that would make one suffer, make one weep. But of all those things and suffering, boy, the one that just, for me personally, that jumps out, that would be the ultimate unbearable torture of hell, and would be a real fire. It'd burn and it'd hurt just as much as fire, and that would be separation. There'll be no presence of God. No one would be capable of loving. No one would be able to receive it.
But even if, through the pain of Kensington, we can begin to grasp the reality of hell, two lingering questions still remain. Why does God allow a place of eternal torment to exist? And what, if any, provision has He made to avoid its consequences? The biblical explanations are a spiritual cornerstone of Western civilization.
Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty, who was and is to come. Worship the Lord in the splendor of His holiness. Tremble before Him, all the earth.
Descriptions of the character and nature of God are predominant themes of the biblical narrative. By definition, God is eternally perfect and holy, and because of this perfection, no sin or evil can exist in His presence.
Thus says the Lord, you were anointed as a guardian cherub, for so I ordained you. You were on the holy mount of God.
The Old Testament book of Ezekiel recounts how, long ago in heaven, a powerful and beautiful angel named Lucifer incited a rebellion against the authority of God.
You were blameless in your ways from the day you were created until wickedness was found in you. You were filled with violence, so you sinned. Your heart became proud on account of your beauty, so I threw you to the earth.
Those two passages describe Lucifer's expulsion from heaven. He took many angels with him, those who perhaps were under his command, those who perhaps were stirred by his own spirit or motivation of rebellion. And God, I believe, at that point created some place for them to live, which was separate from. He was cast down to the earth, we're told. The physical location isn't important, as is the fact that at that point, I believe, hell or some place in the universe where the presence of God did not prevail. And that is the simplest definition of hell. I believe it was created for Satan and for his followers, perhaps at that time, if not before.
The Bible goes on to describe how Lucifer's rebellion devastated the course of history and ignited the timeless battle between good and evil. Hell was created. Legions of angels fell from grace, and God's most precious creation, human life, suddenly became vulnerable to the powers of sin and death. As Adam and Eve, the first man and woman, were confronted by Satan in the Garden of Eden.
Then the Lord said to the woman, what have you done? And the woman replied, the serpent deceived me, and I ate.
The emotion, I believe, that God initially experienced was grief. It broke his heart. It's like when your child that you nurture and you love and you've instructed and you follow them and they do everything good, and then in one major, unexplainable to you, mysterious act, they do something that's in total violation of everything you are, everything you believe, everything you've taught, everything you respect, and you're first dazzled. God wasn't dazzled, he saw it coming, but it broke his heart.
Sin had destroyed man's once perfect relationship with a sinless God and condemned him to death and hell. Yet despite his anger and pain, God reached back to restore his union with the creation he had originally made in his own image. In the defining event of Scripture and history, the God of the universe took human form in the person of Jesus Christ in order to sacrifice himself for the sins of all humanity for all time.
He was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. The punishment that brought us peace was upon him, and by his wounds we are healed.
God has a desperate caring for every human being that ever has been or will be born. Some people say, well, how could a loving God send people to hell? The people who end up in that place of separation from God will be people who, by either choice or negligence, have turned their backs on the message, the provision, and the way of God revealed by him in his scriptures and through his prophets.
And I had this image of hell after the final judgment, that after all are inside the heavenly kingdom and the New Jerusalem, and there's great rejoicing. You can just hear maybe the praises, you can hear the praise, the glory, the rejoicing, the love for each other, the love for the Lord. And as everybody is kind of moved in, the last person who was at the door Jesus lets the last person in. And as Jesus begins to shut the eternal door, the final separation between good and evil, as he shuts that portal, as he's shutting it, that he looks out upon those in hell, those who want nothing, no part of God, that don't want him, they don't love him, they don't want him. That as that door begins to shut, as it's shutting, as he looks out at them, he still loves them. And I see a tear come down from his eye, it trickles down his face, as he shuts the door and as he looks out upon them. Not despising them, but just crushed and saddened because they wouldn't receive and accept his love. And so he leaves them and gives them a place for what they've chosen in life.
I think that people do feel that when they're in heaven that all the pain, the suffering, the misery, the strife will all be gone. Because when they're deeply in the presence of God, you know, that's when there is joy, there is comfort, there's hope. And that's what they're seeing in heaven. They can't articulate it too well, they can only speculate. But the bottom line is, it doesn't matter what happens as long as you're in the presence of a loving God.
Through more than 4,000 years of history, no hope has burned more brightly than the prospect of an eternity spent with God in heaven. It is the hope that inspired Abraham, father of the Hebrew nation, while he lived as a nomad in Canaan, the promised land, with his heart set on another home far greater than any earthly dwelling.
By faith, Abraham made his home in the promised land, like a stranger in a foreign country. For he was looking forward to the city with foundations, whose architect and builder is God.
Abraham's dream of an eternity with his Creator, somewhere beyond the imperfections of this earth, is timeless and universal. For the biblical ideal of heaven has always been portrayed as the dwelling place of God. Here he rules from a celestial throne with his legions of angels. It is a realm of unimaginable beauty and light, and the ultimate desire of the human heart.
Heaven is the reason for living on earth. Heaven is the bottom line of life on earth. We just won't step into that until we step into the other side of eternity. Then we'll be home.
In 1967, Joni Eareckson Tada, then a vibrant young woman of 17, was paralyzed from the neck down while diving in the Chesapeake Bay. It was a tragedy that would forever change her perspective on both God and eternity. After more than 2 decades of study and reflection, she shared her insights with the world in a book titled Heaven, Your Real Home.
I never used to find the references about heaven in Scripture as all that enticing. But then I broke my neck and became paralyzed, and suddenly hardships had a way of forcing me to think about heavenly glories above, where I would indeed one day get a new body, hands that would work and feet that would walk. And to me it was so hopeful to know that life in a wheelchair would not be my only life. Because when you lose something down here on earth, you can't help but revive your hope of not only getting it back, but so much more in heaven.
The mere thought of perfect healing and everlasting joy inspires extraordinary feelings of both hope and anticipation. And through the ages, man has always wondered that if somewhere beyond the physical universe an eternal paradise really does exist, then what would it be like to call it home? It is a mystery beyond the scope of human understanding. Yet the Bible is filled with images and clues.
And I saw a white horse whose rider was called Faithful and True. On his robe his name is written, King of Kings and Lord of Lords.
The Scriptures reveal that following Christ's return to earth, a millennium of peace and Satan's banishment to hell, God will then complete his creation of a perfect environment he will share forever with those who love him. According to Israel's ancient prophets, the foundations of this heavenly kingdom will be established when the very fabric of the earth and universe are first torn asunder.
O Lord God, you laid the foundations of the earth, and the heavens are the work of your hands. They will perish, but you will endure. Yes, they will all grow old like a garment. Like a cloak, you will change them, and they will be changed.
A day is coming when I believe this earth will be renovated by fire, somehow be purified. And in that purification, in that fiery conflagration, a new earth. God will create a new earth out of this old earth.
The heavens will pass away with a great noise, and the elements will melt with fervent heat. Both the earth and the works that are in it will be burned up.
The prophet Isaiah called this ordeal the great and terrible day of the Lord. To many, the spiritual implications of these seemingly devastating events are unmistakable. For as the earth and the universe are destroyed by fire, so too are the final remnants of sin and death. Then, in a stunning act of creation, God will fashion a new and perfect universe and planet that will exist for all eternity.
For behold, I create new heavens and a new earth, and the former shall not be remembered. But be glad and rejoice forever in what I will create.
When we talk about the life hereafter, we're describing some environment that's designed for man and man designed for it. It's a custom fit. It'll be an environment in which we can live with God and God can live with us. And the new heaven and the new earth will be refashioned so that this living environment is perfect for both of us, for Him and for us as human beings.
Attempts to picture what heaven will be like are invariably tied to the physical glories of our planet as it now exists. For we tend to imagine paradise in the context of the natural world that surrounds us. Yet, the Scriptures suggest that though the new universe and earth may well contain mountains, rivers, and clouds, the magnificence of eternity will far surpass anything we can now comprehend.
Earth is but a dim reflection of the glories in heaven. The Rocky Mountains, the Himalayas, the Grand Canyon and its majestic vista. I mean, all these things are shadowy, half-toned images of the real mountains, the real splendor, the real rivers, the real glaciers, everything that one day will be much more real. Earth does a pretty good job of whetting our appetite for it, but heaven's going to take it a giant step further.
While the physical glories of heaven are overwhelming to contemplate, the Bible also alludes to even greater joys that may await us on an experiential level.
Everything we've ever wanted to do in a righteous dimension we will be able to do. If you've always wanted to sing like a bird or paint like an artist or travel the galaxies like a space person, I think all of those things will be available to us to be done to an exponent of X. We have no way of even imagining. In fact, the Apostle Paul quotes an Old Testament prophetic passage which says, "Eye has never seen, and ear has never heard, nor has it ever entered into the heart or imagination of man what God has prepared for those who love Him." So the description of this new world is one that's so immense and glorious that we couldn't even begin to describe it. We would have no frame of reference from experience, even if our words could technically describe what we were seeing.
For a brief moment, 1900 years ago, a brilliant light was cast upon the mystery of heaven. In a vision from God, the Apostle John actually gazed into eternity and beheld the new universe and earth, and with them a third dimension of paradise. A remarkable city, foretold by the Old Testament prophets, that would descend through the clouds toward the new earth. Here it is written, God will dwell forever with His people. It is called the New Jerusalem.
Then an angel carried me away to a high mountain and showed me the holy city, the New Jerusalem. It shone with the glory of God, and its brilliance was like that of a very precious jewel.
Both the Old Testament and New Testament prophecies indicate that this indeed will be the dwelling place of the true and living God. This New Jerusalem, this heavenly city. Jesus said he was going to leave His followers to go and prepare a place for them. And He said, in my Father's house there are many rooms. So I kind of portray this holy city, this heavenly city that comes down, I believe personally, to earth as the crown jewel of residence for all those faithful people that believe in God from all the centuries.
Theologians and scholars have long tried to interpret John's description of this city, for it provides the Bible's clearest glimpse of heaven. Though their opinions have varied, Many agree that details of the New Jerusalem's actual design are specifically noted in the final chapters of Revelation.
She had a great and high wall, with 12 gates, and 12 angels at the gates. On the gates were written the names of the 12 tribes of the children of Israel. There were 3 gates on the east, 3 gates on the north, 3 on the south, and 3 on the west. The city was laid out like a square, as long as it was wide, 12,000 stadia in length, and as wide and high as it was long. The wall was made of jasper, and the city of pure gold.
Because the Apostle John gave the New Jerusalem dimensions, I have to believe it is a very real place. There will be streets, there will be rivers running through it, there will be walls, but they will be streets and rivers and walls which are entirely alien to anything we know of here on earth.
Many scholars believe that the New Jerusalem will be shaped like a cube, the Greek and Hebrew symbol of perfection. Measuring about 1,500 miles on each of its edges, its base alone would cover nearly all of the continental United States. But beyond the enormity of its dimensions, there is intriguing spiritual symbolism in the city's overall design. No building in ancient Israel was more important than Jerusalem's temple. Once each year, within its walls, the high priest would approach a sacred room called the Holy of Holies. There, he would enter into the presence of God. In Israel's first temple, completed by Solomon in 959 BC, this Holy of Holies, which housed the Ark of the Covenant, was constructed as a perfect cube, measuring 30 feet wide, long, and high.
And what does this tell us? I think it tells us that the New Jerusalem, just like that Holy of Holies, a smaller cube, is a place where, like the Holy of Holies, it will be filled with the presence of God, the dazzling presence of God. The Holy of Holies was the place where God dwelt and met with his people. And I do believe that that's the parallel, and that's the purpose of this holy city. It will be, like the Holy of Holies, this wonderful place where God in all of his dazzling presence will meet with his people.
Now the wall of the city had 12 foundations, and on them were the names of the 12 apostles of the Lamb. The foundations of the walls of the city were precious stones, and the glory of God gave it light. And he showed me a pure river of the water of life, clear as crystal, proceeding from the throne of God. And God himself will be with them, and he will be their God. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death, or mourning, or crying, or pain, for the old order of things has passed away.
That blows the proportions on how wonderful heaven will be, because it won't be the job of angels to dry our tears. It won't be my husband's job or friends. It will be God's job. It says in the book of Revelation that he personally, he will wipe away our tears. God will wipe away our tears. And so nothing will be wasted. And Get goosebumps thinking about it.
An eternity with God in a home He has fashioned for anyone who will accept His love. This, according to the Bible, is the great hope and promise of heaven. And though we cannot even begin to imagine the full magnitude of the New Jerusalem's mystery and splendor, or what it will be like to live in a world devoid of pain and death, God has given us glimpses of the eternal that touch the deepest longings of the heart. A biblical vision of the afterlife that will shine forever.
That is heaven. Faith, hope, love, God's presence, love for one another, in a place prepared for us from the beginning of time, to be finally at one and fulfilled with joy and glory, so that God's joy may be our own, and it will be complete.
And so I can realistically entertain thoughts of one day walking and running and splashing my feet in a stream and peeling an orange and batting a tennis ball and pole vaulting the pearly gates. But I also can entertain the joy of having a heavenly body that will be so splendorous, so brilliant, so wonderful. And so all those pleasurable sensations, all those joys and all those things that light up one's eyes and ignite the passion in the heart, experienced here on earth is but child's play compared to the pleasure and the riches and the passion and the dynamism and the glory and the heat and the light and the fun and the play and the happiness and the tears of joy and the sheer delight that will be in heaven.
Then your light shall break forth like the morning, and your healing shall spring forth. And you shall call, and the Lord shall answer, Here I am. Your sun will never set again, and your moon will wane no more. The Lord will be your everlasting light, and your days of sorrow will end. I am the Lord, and in its time I will do this swiftly.